Kelly Rustick again, world-renowned grant writer, founder of Grant Writing and Funding, Amazon best-selling author, and podcast host of Grant Writing and Funding. It's great to have you join me for the third video, number 3, you guys, in my free workshop, Freelance Grant Writing Freedom. In this video, I'm going to outline the exact blueprint you need to develop for pricing and packaging. If you've ever been confused about how to piece these things together and how they all work with grant writing, and more importantly, what goes in to creating massive amounts of success with freelance grant writing, then this video is for you. Maybe you're a newbie grant writer who doesn't know how to price your services, or maybe you're already an accomplished grant writer that isn't experiencing the kind of growth that you really desire. So in this video, I'm going to show you how aspiring freelance grant writers, and maybe those grant writers who have plateaued, can develop pricing and packaging. So just to recap, in video number 1, we talked about when is the right time to get off the floundering fence and to gain clarity and confidence. Then in video number 2, we talked about the first step in actually identifying your nonprofit niche. So if you haven't seen those videos, stop it. You can go ahead and pause this here and go back and watch video number 1 and 2. And then come back to this one. So today I'm going to build on what we've already discussed by giving you the complete blueprint to develop pricing and packaging. And believe you me, this is the big thing people always ask me about, right? This is the big stumbling block, if you will. By the end of this video, though, you're going to have so much clarity about freelance grant writing, and you're going to see how everything fits together. So we are going to break free of that frustration, and it's key, this is totally key, in helping you start a real business and get nonprofit clients so you can experience more clarity and confidence. We've got a lot to cover today, so make sure you have a pen and paper ready and you're ready to go. Anytime you're trying to develop pricing and packaging, it can be hard. Because in the beginning, everything is new. Things like what to charge, how to charge, and when to charge are always stumbling blocks. And they might put you off from actually even putting a proposal forward because you have so much anxiety and fear over it. Or it takes you like 3 weeks or 5 weeks to even follow up with the nonprofit client. And by then, they've already moved on to somebody else. And by then, too, you're also feeling really ashamed and because you've taken so long to get back to them. And of course, as you grow, you're going to come up against new challenges. Even if you have experience with freelance grant writing already, you're always looking for the 80-20. And what do I mean by that? You don't have time to waste, right? So you want to find the 20% that produces the 80% of the results. That is working smarter and not harder. That's why freelance grant writing, pricing, and packaging tips are going to save you a ton of time. This is the exact blueprint you need to develop for pricing and packaging. With that said, I need to warn you before we get rolling. So the entire blueprint is awesome, right? But I am going to give you the 20% that gives you the 80% of results. So let's get the meat and potatoes of today's video, starting with my own history, right? So I remember nonprofit clients would come to me and I didn't have prices and packaging really developed, right? So it was more like they would come to me and I would kind of gauge to see, they would be able to pay, and then I would spend the time looking at the grant, and then I would go back and forth, and then I would call people like my mentor and be like, I don't know what to charge. And it's this back and forth thing instead of just already figuring out what I needed to charge, right? So here's the thing, you guys. Nonprofit clients don't really want to come to you and tell you how to price your services. All right, you may want that because you think, well, if they just tell me how much money they have, then I can work with that. Well, that is not being a professional at all. And don't put it back on them to figure out a price. Like, why would we even do that? But that's the way a lot of startups think because they just don't know how to package things. So it's really important for you to know your worth, number 1. It's also really good for you to know how much time it takes you to write certain grants. So your time is number 2. And then, of course, number 3, you need to already have proposals developed. All right, so let's talk about that. So number 1, your value. Have you been looking around your area to see how much freelancers even charge? Do you know the market rate? Now, this isn't always something you should, just because Joe Schmo is charging $100 an hour, you should charge $100 an hour, right? I'm not saying to piggyback exactly, but you kind of need to get out there and to see what the market will hold, what it will bear, right, in your area. Because somebody charging $100 an hour, say in New York City for freelance grant writing, and someone charging $100 an hour, say in Iowa, like in a rural area, $100 an hour for their services, it might be a really different story, right? The market might not bear that same rate. So it's really important for you to first look around, do your homework, okay? The other thing to note is it's not just how much people are charging, right? So one way you can find that out, of course, is to look around. You can ask people. A lot of times people don't like to give away their prices, but believe you me, a lot of times more and more people are actually displaying their prices on their websites. And I love it when people do this. I actually started doing that. I did that for a long time with my services because I didn't want people coming to me and then doing a discovery call and then them realizing my prices and then, not saying they couldn't afford me. It was just like, oh my gosh, I just wasted a whole bunch of time and I did a lot of work. So I actually found that just publishing my prices would vet people right out the gate, right? Like, they wouldn't come to me if they couldn't afford me, right? Because I could just refer them to my services on my page. And the other thing, too, is I didn't get so many emails about my prices and stuff because they were published. So it kind of eliminated two things. So I could focus on the 20% that was bringing in the 80%. And the other thing, too, of course, then the 20% of the clients that would, come to me then, right? Like, I took out the 80% that would be dead leads, and then I took the 20% that came to me that already saw my published prices on my website, and they would still approach me, so I knew that they could afford me, which was really, really good, and that they were serious. So that is one way that you can find other freelancers' prices a lot of times is on their websites. The other thing, of course, you can do is you can do some searches through your Department of Labor to find out what kind of rates, different kinds of consultants are getting paid. Sometimes even in your government prices, you can see if there's a government consulting price within your state or your city, just to see what they're paying for different consultants, or that they have a position that might be similar in the government, and you can kind of see what that is. Not that you should charge exactly the same as an employee rate, but you could add, 20% of overhead and that sort of thing on top of that rate, so you had a good idea where to start. Now, the other thing, of course, is, so we looked at, you might not charge the same rate as somebody in a different geographic location. So the other thing, too, is you have to also understand your experience and your skills. So if you've been writing grants for 5 years and you have experience and now you're going to transition into freelance writing or grant writing, you're going to be able to charge a different rate than somebody who's never written grants that wants to open a freelance grant writing company, right? So definitely, the experience also brings you to the table as far as what your prices can be. So you're definitely going to want to price yourself accordingly. And the other thing, too, is if you've written grants, say, I have some people coming to me and they're like, hey, Holly, I've written grants, but I've only done it on a volunteer basis or as an intern. Can that still count as experience? Yes, of course it can. People don't need to know that you didn't get paid for it. They just need to know that you've done the work, right? So really, knowing your value is really looking at the market, seeing what it will bear geographically, but also what your experience can bring to the table, and really how to identify what people are getting paid in your field so you can kind of at least get a baseline for it. And of course, the other thing too is you need to price where you're going to feel comfortable with your value. So if I say, well, other people they're only, charging $25 an hour in my town, and I've got a few years of experience, so maybe I'll just start there, but I'm really not going to show up when I'm just getting $25 an hour. I kind of feel like, it doesn't really make me excited, and I really can't cover my bills with that. So you also have to be excited to show up, right? So, the thing is, if it scares you just a little bit, that's probably a good thing. So you don't want it to be so comfortable where, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't believe I took on that client and I only charged that and I'm working so much right now and I'm putting in so much value and I'm not getting paid in return for the amount I put in. So you really need to make sure on that as well. That's very important to show up fully and be excited about it. All right, so let's move on to number 2. So we covered number 1 is value, and now let's look at number 2. The second thing is understanding the time. Okay, and why do I say this? I say this because a lot of times we're going to move into our next thing about packaging. Freelancers, they like to charge a rate for packages, and you can definitely do that, but maybe you always want to be hourly. That's up to you, but you still need to kind of know how many hours it takes you to write grants. Okay, so you have to track your time. Track your time, track your time, track your time. You can do that through different ways. You can open an Excel sheet and just track it at the, when you start a project and end it. That's a little bit time consuming. There's definitely tech tools that can help you with this, and one I always share is Toggle. I love Toggle, T-O-G-G-L, and that is a great tracker. You can put it on your desktop. You can also put it on your phone, and you can just write in different projects that you're working on, so you can put your client's name on there. And then you just put your client name and start. And as soon as you ended something with that client, say you had lunch or whatever, you just hit stop, or took a phone call, you could even hit stop, and then you can just hit it again to restart, or you can change to a different client. And what's really cool about that is it totally tracks your time, but it also gives you a report, which you can then hand over to your clients. But it's so good for you to know, like, okay, I'm writing these foundation grants, and now I can see on average it takes me about 20 hours to write one of these, to write a 4-page foundation application. So now I know what to charge my clients because, from A, knowing your value. So you're saying, okay, it takes me at least 20 hours to write a foundation grant, and I'm going to charge $50 an hour because that's what the market will bear. So 50 times 20 is what? It's $1,000, right? So I'm going to charge a bare minimum of $1,000 for foundation grants that have 4 pages, say, right? So that is a really good way for you to understand how to price, or at least set baselines. And that's the same too. So if a federal grant comes in and you've been tracking your time when you're writing different federal grants, and on average it takes you 100 hours to write a federal grant, so $100 times 50 is $5,000. So that's definitely a way. So don't just say I do grant writing and I only charge $1,000 to write a grant. Be specific. Is it foundation? How many pages is it? Is it a federal grant? Right? So you really want to say, well, this is where I start. And I also like to say that this is my starting here, right? And this is on average how long it takes me to write a federal grant. However, this is my hourly rate if it goes over, but I will send you a report in advance, every single week so we can track my hours, right? Something like that. You can definitely do those kind of things. So there's kind of a combination, but if you don't track your time and you don't know how long it takes you to write grants, then you're really going to, put yourself in a corner. And I say this, you say, but Holly, I just charge hourly, so I don't have to worry about that. You do, because if your client, you signed up, a client, and they're like, okay, I want you to write a federal grant, and you said, okay, great, and they said, well, how much is it going to be? And you say, oh, I charge hourly, so I'll just send you a report at the end. They're not really going to be happy about that. They want to at least know about how many hours, because they have to budget for it, right? Respect that. They've got a budget, and they just need to know. So if all of a sudden you submit a report, and it's $5,000, and they had no idea that's how long it would take you, even if they knew your rate was $50 an hour, they thought, oh, maybe it'll take, a few hours, because they didn't understand how much work goes into this, right? That's going to shock them, and they might not have the budget. And the other thing, too, is you want to get a deposit up front, all right, guys? So don't just submit it at the end and then charge, this is how much it costs. You've already done all that work, and if they can't pay, like, no. So always ask for a deposit as well up front. So that's really important to track your time so it's going to take me about this long. And sometimes, I'll even tell clients, I say, it's going to take me about 100 hours to work on this grant, so, I'm charging this, and so I'm not charging an hourly rate, I'm just charging a set fee. And if I go over, that's on me, right? But if I go under, and if I can really start working quicker and, working on it, then that's better for me as well. So remember, it's not just the hour that you're working on something. It's all the knowledge, the skills, the investments that you put into things of what that hour entails of what you can charge, okay? So be sure to know how long, at least on average, it takes you to write different types of grants. And even if you haven't written that exact same federal grant, okay, it's a federal grant. It's going to be different than a foundation game, right? Or even if you've written a lot of foundation grants before, but you haven't written this specific one, at least you have an idea. So that's really important to know your time. Okay, and the third thing we're going to talk about today is packaging. And I kind of touched on this already, but there are different ways on how you can actually offer your services, right? It's not you don't just have to be like, oh, it's just hourly, right? You can also do packages like you kind of heard me explain, like, you can write different grants for set amounts. you can combine it together, right? So a lot of times I love putting together grant research and grant writing, okay? So yeah, I even do a nonprofit wellness audit a lot of times, and that's just a part of the entire package. So I could offer, and that's where I check, to make sure they're grant ready, check their fiscal policies and procedures, their board structure, just everything that they're doing, their branding, their messaging, and then I can get all the things that I'm going to need for a grant. So it sets me up. So I'm going to get the resumes of the staff. I'm going to get the bios of the board of directors. I'm going to get all those things. I'm going to get, the articles. I'm going to know when they were incorporated. I'm going to get the history of the nonprofit, previous grants that they've written. All of that stuff, so I can, one, audit it and kind of look it over and give a nice report to them and recommendations on how they can increase their competitiveness to get grants. And on the flip side of that, I'm also set up then for a lot of the documents that I'm going to need for grants, so I don't have to wait for them. And then that sets me back to be able to actually submit the grants. I don't want to be waiting around when there's a deadline, right? Nobody does, right? So you want to get that stuff up front. So that's great to put that as your, this is our initial thing that we're going to do first, and then I'm going to do the grant research, so we're going to get set up. Then I'm going to do the grant research, and I'm going to find 10 best fit grant applications for you, right? 10 best fit funding sources. That's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to do that research, right? And then the next thing I'm going to do is I can write 5 foundation applications for you. So 5 foundation grant applications. And you have the option of getting a federal one, right? Because that's a whole different cost. I would give them a discount. So that's one thing that you can really do, just to package it all together. And if you know about how long it takes you to do these things, right, then you understand what your pricing should be. The good thing about doing it in that way, and that's definitely not the only way you can do it, or not the only way you should always do it, but it is one way because it simplifies, this is what I do, so you're very clear on what you do when nonprofits come to you. Like I said in the beginning, don't make them tell you how much money they have to pay for you and what they need. They don't know what they need. So you need to tell them and educate them on what they need to do, and then tell them the price. Now it's up to you then if you want to give a discount. But the other thing is, if you charge too low, there's no room for a discount. Okay, guys? So don't have prices that scare a little tiny bit. Really be oh my gosh, but then I can never help people. Yes, you can. You can always give discounts if you want to. The other thing with that too, so I said you could package that up. And that might be something that you put together and you're like, okay, that's a $7,000 package right there. And you just know that's it. That's what they get. You're going to research 10 places. You're going to submit 5 foundation grant applications, and they have the opportunity to get a discount on federal grant writing. Or you can also take those apart and sell those a la carte. I only do, here's a nonprofit wellness audit, it's $2,000, and finding and researching 10 best fit funding sources is $2,000, and then what we have down here is writing these 5 foundation applications is $10,000. So that's going to be a lot more for them to pay for if they have to pay for each piece individually, right? And part of that too is because if you're doing all those 3 pieces for the same client, it's actually less work because you're getting to know them a lot more, right? So that's also helpful for you, but then it's also kind of easier to say, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? So it gives them the thought process of, oh, I want A or B, instead of, do you want this or not anything at all, right? So you do want to have some kind of options just for that kind of thought process as well, right? So that's really, really good. So you can definitely do packaging. And like I said, you just have to know, once again, what your value is, what your time is worth so you know what to price, and then you have to develop some ways to package what you want to offer. So those are some different ways on how you can do your pricing and packages. And believe you me, that is 20% of the aid that you need to really move forward in prices and packaging. And that really helped me get away from taking weeks to get back to people. I already had what I needed developed, so then I could say, well, I can do, this package for you, or you can pick one of these things, right? And we can just work on that. And man, my sales went up, securing leads went up, because I was able to really understand even what I was offering and to communicate that very well and to make it immediate. As soon as somebody would call me up, like I said, these were even published on my website. But as soon as people would, contact me, they already knew it, or I could get back to them. They called me up. They said, "Hey, Holly, we have a federal grant we want you to write," because sometimes that will happen. They'll just come to you knowing exactly what they want. Very few and far between, but sometimes that happens. And over the phone, I could say, "Well, my starting rate is this," and it was really easy then to secure contracts because they saw my confidence and my clarity. Isn't it easier now seeing how everything fits together? And most importantly, doesn't it feel good knowing what you should focus on right now, regardless of where you are in your journey? So remember, understanding your value, tracking your time. Even if you're like, "Holly, I've never written a grant before." Well, start writing one and track your time. So that's a good way to, get on your journey. But don't you see how this clarity will help you start a business, get nonprofits, and know what to charge? So now that you've got those wheels turning, I want to hear from you. I know you picked up a lot of great ideas from this video today, and it's time to get started. So let me know what you think about in the comments below as your first step. And if you found this video helpful, please share it with other people on Facebook, social media, YouTube, to share it around. I want more people to understand this because, man, the anxiety I went through, I don't want anyone going through that. I know this can be a simpler journey. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to implement what you learned today and faster. If you're a newbie grant writer, this is the exact plan so you can start a real business and get nonprofit clients. And if you're already an accomplished grant writer, you'll build on what we've already started talking about by following the steps so you can get past what's holding you back and you can get on track to reach your goals. Speaking of learning how to start a real business and freelance grant writing and being able to secure clients, well, we've been hearing from a number of people who have questions about the Freelance Grant Writing Master Course. And I'm going to share about it more in the next video, but as you know, the cart is open. All right, you got the early bird special until Saturday night, and then, bam, the gates close, you guys, Sunday night, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to close the gates. We will not open that course again until 2021. And it's going to be a different price by then. But in the next video, I'm going to talk more about the program and how you can join. The way it works is we run a cohort together, so every week you're going to get videos, you're going to get downloadables, and if you've been enjoying the videos you've been doing here, just wait till you get into those modules. Man, we go deep. We really get into it. Then we meet every single week to go over the materials in a live Zoom meeting. And then we have a private Facebook group similar to this one, but where we can share different things. If you're working on your mission statement for your company, then we can share those things. If you're working on your logo or your website, or you're wondering about what you should price and package, where you can share these things in the group so you can streamline and fast track. Get off that floundering fence and move your business forward. So if you're interested in moving forward and want to know how, you'll want to join me in the next video where I lay it all out for you. But for now, I'm going to leave you with this. Just by taking part in this workshop, you're already closer to knowing how to get a start and grow a real business. Think about video 1, where you learn how to get off the floundering fence and you got clarity and confidence. And it's amazing how simple it can be once you have the steps. Then you made huge strides in video number 2, where you saw how to get and keep nonprofit clients and really identify your niche. That's huge. And knowing this will continue to pay off from now into the future. And today you got a blueprint on how you can actually develop your prizes and packaging. Isn't it easier understanding along the way? To make it better, we even cut right to the chase so you can get bigger results faster and with less demand on you. In the last week, you've learned so much about starting a real business and getting nonprofit clients. And in the next video, I'm going to show you your next step along your journey. I'm so excited about what's in store for you. I'll see you guys in the next video.